This week you'll be reading chapter 2, which is all about how to identify and then create a narrative essay. So, before I get started in going over and reviewing the material covered in the chapter, I wanted to briefly kind of explain to you how this textbook is set up. I don't know if you've ever used a composition textbook that is set up in this way. So that's why I wanted to touch on it because it can look a little messy. It's even a little difficult for me to navigate sometimes. So again, that's why I want to kind of go over how each of these chapters is going to be set up. The book is essentially cut up into a few parts, and I'm not quite sure when everything changes over, but the first portion of the book is a chapter, or chapters just like chapter 2, where it's discussing different types of writing and how to accomplish that. Then, after that, comes chapters that outline the strategies and how exactly to apply those strategies to your writing. So one is kind of the information and the theory behind each type of writing, and the strategy chapters are more of the practical application of that information. So we'll be working with them together as we go throughout the quarter. So you'll notice that, for the narrative writing unit, for example, you're going to be working with chapter 2 and chapter 14. Chapter 14 covers the strategies, again, the practical side, the application side of the information that's presented in chapter 2. So within these chapters that touch on the different types of writing, again, it's kind of cut into different parts. So the first few pages, I view it as pages 11 through 17 of chapter 2, are kind of the basic things that you would identify, the basic important elements within a narrative essay. And then after that, starting on page, let's see, 17, you start getting writing examples and samples that published authors have written to help show you effective narratives, and that's when you use those is on the discussion boards. So you will get this middle chunk when you do the discussion boards. And then after that comes, for me, it's on page 32, you get the guide to writing, where you actually are shown how to write a narrative essay. So again, it begins with the practical information, gives you a bunch of samples, effective samples that you can read and kind of study and analyze to see how they're applying that information. And then the chapter ends on guiding you to writing your own narrative. So hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully this helps clear up. To me, I think it's a pretty messy chapter, or a way to set up a textbook, but it's extremely effective. So again, that's kind of why I wanted to touch on it. If you're looking at this going, oh my gosh, this is just overwhelming with so much information, don't be overwhelmed. Just take it one step at a time. That's why I try to break up the reading. You're working with the samples and the discussion boards. And then as you can see here, I've got the basics of narrative and the page numbers, and then how to do it yourself in those page numbers. So try not to be overwhelmed with, to me, the kind of visual ugliness of the chapter. All right, so with that, oh, and this is how these chapters are going to be. So pretty much every chapter that relates to how, or that again relates to the different types of learning. Oh my goodness, I'm having troubles today. That applies to the different types of writing. They're all going to be set up in a similar way. Okay, so let's go over the basic elements of the narrative. I love that the chapter kind of keeps it simple and focuses really on only a few of them. So the first thing that it mentions is the purpose and the significance. What is the purpose in a narrative? Whether it's when you're reading or when you're writing, it needs to have a reason behind it. Why is it being written? What is it trying to teach the audience? And who is that audience? Also, what is significant about this purposeful narrative? They're different. It's got to be significant because it's got to be important. It's got to have an impact on the author as well as the reader, but there still needs to be a purpose behind it too. What are you trying to teach? So as you write your own, make sure that the experience or event that you choose to write about is significant in some way. Also, make sure that you narrow down exactly what your purpose is in telling it. If it's not significant, your reader's not going to care and they're going to wonder why you're writing about it. If you don't have a purpose, again, your reader's going to wonder why you're bothering to write about it and what they're supposed to learn from it. Um, then it talks about how, of course, a narrative is a well-told story. It has to be. It wouldn't be a narrative without that. However, it's not just a well-told story. It needs to have, again, that purpose and that significance, and the reflection on the author's part as to why the story is being written. But you got to tell it well. Otherwise, your reader's not going to care. Um, so when you pick your topic, make sure that it's a story that you can tell well. You have a lot of detail, it has a lot of description opportunities, things like that. You have to hook your audience with your topic and what you have to say about it, but you also have to keep them interested. So you've got to tell your story well. So hopefully have your books out and look on page 12 at the dramatic arc in the upper left-hand corner, and you'll see, the exposition, the inciting incident, rising action, climax, falling, all that stuff. Make sure you understand what those things are. I think they're pretty well spelled out for you, so I don't feel the need to review that. But I will be asking you to define all of this information in your essay number 1 outline. So make sure you have a good grasp of what this stuff is. Also, as we'll see later in the chapter, this is a good way to help organize your paper. Do you want where do you want the climax to come? It doesn't always have to come in the middle. Um, yeah, we'll look over that in just a second. But you can play with your organization based on that arc. So it's good to analyze another person's writing based on that arc, but it's also helpful in crafting your own. And then lastly, the chapter discusses vivid description. You don't want to just tell your reader about what you're talking about. You want to show them. You show them through specific examples, specific details, instead of just saying, I crossed the street and got hit by a car. There's a lot more detail that you can give. Don't you love my lovely example? I don't know where that came from. But again, you want to show versus tell, and using vivid description shows instead of tells. So you're not telling your reader the story, you are showing them. It might be a little difficult and new for you to try to use so much description that you're clearly showing your reader this information, but that's what you want to work on for your first essay. Okay, so again, that's all those are the basics. There's only 3. So hopefully that's not too overwhelming. So if you flip over to page 32, you get to the section where the textbook shows you how to craft your own narrative. And again, this information might be ugly and might be a little overwhelming in all the writing that you have to look through. However, it gives you very, very clear ways to apply those 3 basic elements of narrative writing. Also, within these chapters, I don't expect you to read every single word and every single example, but I do expect you to at least glance over them. Going back to page, let's see here. If you look on page 2, the textbook highlights those 3 basic paragraphs, the well-told story, the description, and the significance in somebody else's writing. So, bare minimum, look at those 3 elements that they have highlighted in that one sample and see how they work together to create this narrative. So again, if you don't want to spend tons of time with all these tiny examples, then that's fine, but you need to at least glance over them. Otherwise, you're not going to see this information in practice, and that's why this book is so effective. It may be ugly, but it does a really good job of showing you lots of examples on what you could be doing in your own writing. Okay, enough of that. So, of course, you have to start with how to choose the experience you want to talk about. And I think it really goes back to the significance. What is your reader going to care about that you have to share? And what stories do you have that you can provide the most information and the most detail and, again, the most significance, purpose, and reflection on? It's got to be a good experience. It needs to have some tension, some drama, the textbook outlines a lot of ways to help choose your experience. So make it a good one. We all have something to share, so please don't think you don't. Just find one that is really good. Then it moves on to shaping your story. Of course, I'm going to help you with that by completing an outline, and hopefully that will help you get some ideas going. And yeah, that it will, help you get a really good head start on drafting. If you look on page 37, that's where it talks about organization. And if you look at in the white box on page 37, you will see the different elements of the dramatic arc and how they can be put in a different order. So the first one shows, the traditional order of the inciting incident, the climax is in the middle, following action resolution. However, if you look on the right, there's a little change up in that organization. So think about how you want to organize your narrative. It needs to make sense. It needs to be logical. You don't want to just throw your paragraphs together and expect your reader to follow you if you jump back and forth. A very, very easy way to organize your narrative is in chronological order. First this, then this, then this. That's pretty traditional. If that's what you want to do, then do it. Otherwise, you can play with it if you want and try to challenge yourself in that way. The textbook also covers the importance of tense. I really, really suggest that you just focus on the past tense for the telling. If you want to use present for reflecting, that's fine. But again, your experience happened in the past. It can't happen in the future because you can't be writing about it. So keep in the past tense unless you're reflecting, and then that can be present. It gives you more ideas on how to use dialogue and how to use description to show instead of tell. Really nothing big there. Just review those suggestions. But one thing that I thought was particularly cool is if you look on page 46, there's a troubleshooting guide for you. So say you get your outline back with feedback from me and I tell you some things to improve on. You can go to this troubleshooting guide and see if it can help you in any way. Like say I don't get how your experience is significant. Perhaps I think it's a bit shallow or something in how you're describing it. You can go to the my readers don't understand the significance of the story box and see the text's suggestions for how to fix that. I think that's pretty cool. That's a pretty cool resource for you to have on how to fix your essay and to make it more effective. So that's about all I really wanted to cover from chapter 2. Not a ton of information, but it's very good information. So really look through the chapter, read as many samples as you can so that you can see how the information is actually being applied to writing, because that's what's going to help you most in the paper. If you have any questions, let me know.